welcome to Twisted Talks. I'm Josh.
I'm Tanya.
So, in this week's episode, Tanya is going to be covering the case of Ariel Castro's House of Horrors.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, preface.
Is it preface or preface?
I think it's tomato.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway. Apologies on how, and there's someone out there listening, probably at work, so shout out to you. I also apologise in advance if it happens again in this episode to anyone who is listening wearing earphones when I find something funny and start howling laughing, because I have such a loud and aggressive laugh, especially over a microphone. So apologies in advance for burst eardrums. You have been warned. I will not accept any claims made against me.
So just before we get into this week's episode, I'd like to apologise for my laugh. I personally make no apologies for my laugh. I don't think I've laughed loudly on this podcast yet, but when the time comes...
God bless America.
Deal with it.
Why America? I don't know. God bless everyone.
You don't believe in God?
No, I don't, but I like to say.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so...
Spirit bless America.
Universe, look out for everyone.
Well, I don't know how good of a job it's doing at that so far.
Also,
but...
this week we are recording in the fine studio that is my Corolla, once again. So
Corolla de Colin.
Colin de Corolla. So, sorry about that. Needs must.
It might be fine though, actually, because I find as well a lot of the time audio can be more, even better when you're in slightly smaller space. Not small enough for there to be like a weird echoey thingy, but like small enough for it to keep the audio nearer to the mic. So I actually think it's not even a bad thing. It's
we shall
beneficial.
See. We shall see.
And yeah, okay.
Are you ready to hear about this?
I don't think I'm ever ready, to be honest, especially when it's something I've never looked into.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're not familiar with this case at all, are you?
No. Like, when you first told me the name of one of the victims, obviously not to be insensitive, but like, just because of the name, the first thing that came into my head, and luckily my TikTok wasn't plastered with it, was berries and cream.
Berries and cream, berries and cream.
I managed to avoid that taking over my TikTok. Thank fuck.
Forgotten all about that. Thank you for putting that back into my head. It's going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the day.
You are very welcome.
But anyway.
Now,
shut up
take
and
it
let
away,
me talk.
bitch.
Shut up and let me talk, you fucking dickhead.
I have the controls in front of me. I will mute you throughout the podcast and everyone will be like, Tanya's not doing very good at talking about this case. And I'd be like,
yeah, I know.
Sabotage.
Sabotage.
Okay. She keeps cutting out.
So, today's case begins with, I'm going to say Ariel because that's just how I've heard it pronounced. That's how it slips out, even though I know now it probably is just Ariel.
I'd say it just depends as well, because whatever his, obviously I might find out from you during this, but whatever his background is or heritage,
I'm about to find out.
He might come from a country where it's pronounced like that. That sounds like a German pronunciation. The way you say it to me sounds like Dutch or German.
So Ariel Castro was born in Puerto Rico on July 10th, 1960.
Okay.
So that's
Puerto
why I'm
Rico,
thinking...
so that's South America, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking Ariel.
Probably, actually.
But anyway.
Ariel,
whatever you want to call him.
You'll get the gist.
And after his parents divorced when he was a child, he moved to the United States with his mother and 3 of his siblings. Now, I saw he had like 8 siblings in total, so I'm assuming some of them were after the divorce. So they ended up settling in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where other family members, including his father and some of his other siblings, were living. And then in the 1980s, Castro met Grimilda Figueroa.
What a name.
Yeah, Figueroa just always reminds me of Orange is the New Black.
It reminds me of Galileo Figaro. Oh, there's the laugh. Sorry, you're deaf now.
So Grimilda's family had moved in across the street from Castro's family home. So the two later got married and they moved to 2207 or 2207, I don't know, it's an American address, Seymour Avenue, which was a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with an unfinished basement, and this was still in Cleveland. So they never left Cleveland.
Okay.
And Grimilda's
They
sister
found a home.
in Cleveland.
The Cleveland show.
So Grimilda's sister says all hell started breaking loose after they moved in together. So Castro began physically abusing.
Who's she again?
Grimilda's sister. Grimilda is the girlfriend / wife because he later married her.
Of Castro.
Oh, Ariel Castro. Yes, we're still on Ariel Castro.
Okay.
So Castro began physically abusing Grimilda to the point where he had broken her nose, her ribs, her arms, and he actually caused a blood clot on her brain that led to an inoperable tumour.
Oh my God.
And years down the line, I think it was in 2012, she actually died from this.
So I'm assuming in this we mean tumours and obviously not cancerous, but an abnormal growth.
An abnormal growth caused by blood clot from the physical abuse.
Yeah.
He's also known to have thrown his wife down the stairs, which cracked her skull. And then in 1993, he was arrested for domestic violence, but wasn't indicted by a grand jury. We were. So he wasn't indicted by a grand jury, and an indictment is a criminal accusation that a person has committed a crime. So then in 1996, we were
So basically it was like at this point no charges or anything was ever kind of done. Everything, anytime something might have been mentioned, it was dismissed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in 1996, Grimilda left Castro and the family home and got custody of their 4 children. Police helped her to move.
And these 4 children were all his?
Were all his. Police helped her to move from the house.
We can't indict him, but let's help you move house.
And they detained Castro, but no charges were filed for whatever reason. Now after this, Castro continued to threaten, harass and attack Grimilda.
We don't like it when our victim of abuse decides, I'm not putting up with this no more.
Yep. Well, abusers don't like it. So
yeah.
In 2005, Grimilda filed charges against Castro and was granted a temporary restraining order, but it was dismissed a few months later. Somehow, despite all of this, Castro was working as a bus driver for the Cleveland School Metropolitan District, and he was only fired for bad judgment, like after all this. And the bad judgment included incidents of him making an illegal U-turn with school children on the bus, using the bus to do his grocery shopping.
As you do.
Leaving a child on the bus alone while he went for lunch, and leaving the bus unattended while he went home and took a nap.
But does the bus not lock?
Well, I mean, I would imagine so, but like you can break into a bus all the same. I don't know who would be out here stealing buses, but still.
Yeah, but like, you know, that's like the...
So they
I
were
don't
like...
get that logic.
So they were like, you're baiting your wife, that's fine. You're leaving the bus unattended while you go home and take a nap, you're fired.
Yeah, but I suppose that's where you see the kind of example of, what's the best way to phrase it, church versus state. As in someone's home life, unless they have criminal charges, it can't be used against you in work.
Okay, fair enough.
Do you know, they'd have to have a fireable offence
I suppose
in
if
the work
he had
environment.
been prosecuted for it, maybe.
Then he could have lost his job because there's a criminal record. And
but I suppose if there was no indictment, they had no basis.
Yeah, so like even though they knew he was... That's probably why they let him go for some of those things, because I imagine some of those things a lot of people would do. But knowing the type of person he is, the minute they saw these opportunities, they were like, bye.
Right, okay, we have enough now. We
because beforehand,
get him off our staff.
They couldn't probably, from a legal standpoint, he could have had a case
for unfair dismissal.
Yeah.
So now, we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
The nitty-gritty,
itty-bitty. On August 23rd of 2002, 21-year-old Michelle Knight left her cousin's house to go to a custody meeting because she was trying to get custody of her young son.
And are we still in Cleveland?
We're still in Cleveland. Now, the reason she'd lost custody of her son, whose name is Joey, was because her mother's boyfriend had gotten drunk, become abusive, and broken the child's leg.
And this was her boyfriend or
her mother's boyfriend? So
the child's grandmother's boyfriend.
Yes.
Did they live together?
Yes, I'm assuming so. Now, from what I've read online, Michelle had not the best upbringing. At one point, she was homeless, and she was molested by a family member during her childhood as well.
Okay, so we've been through our fair share of shit.
Yes, and then she got pregnant with Joey when she was a teenager. I think she was 17, 18 at the time. And she said that he was the best thing that ever happened to her. The day he was born was the best day of her life. And she just said, I remember there was a quote about her sitting there with him after he'd been born and just thinking, oh my god, 10 fingers, 10 toes, he's so perfect. Like, she clearly loved her son a lot. Now, Michelle was actually having trouble finding the location of the meeting, and she was walking around for a few hours trying to find it. Then she entered a Family Dollar store and bought a fizzy drink, or a soft drink if you're fancy, and asked for directions. So she asked the cashier and a woman in one of the aisles for directions. Neither of them could help her. And then just as Michelle was about to leave, excuse me, also, guys, I have a sinus infection. I don't want to hear anything about it.
It's not COVID.
So as Michelle was about to leave, a man piped up and said, I know exactly where that is. Michelle recognised this man as Ariel Castro. She knew his daughter Emily from the neighbourhood because she only lived a couple of blocks away.
Okay.
And though she had never met Ariel, she had seen pictures on Emily's phone and heard Emily talking to him on the phone. So Michelle accepted his offer of a drive to the social services meeting, but he told her he had to make a quick stop at his house first. And on the drive, they were obviously chatting. He told her his dog had just had puppies and convinced her to take a puppy for Joey, for her son. By the time they got to his house, which was only a few blocks from Michelle's, he had convinced her to take a puppy home for Joey. They drove down the driveway and Castro padlocked the gate. Now, Michelle did find this strange, and he explained this to her. Like, as this goes on, you will see this man has an answer for everything.
Yeah. Don't they all?
Yeah, so he explained this to her as him not wanting his truck to get stolen. Yeah. That's the face I made when I read it.
So they were in the garden.
Yeah, so...
And he padlocked the garden gate with them inside.
Yeah.
Who's going to steal the truck when you're there with the truck?
Yeah, or when you're in your own house. Like, who's going to steal your truck from your driveway?
Like, I understand at night time or when you're going inside and you're done with your day, but...
Yeah.
Okay.
So Michelle said she waved at an old man standing in the garden next door, and then she followed Castro into the house, not knowing that she would now be his captive.
Yeah, my wondering, to do with the whole, how it was, did you say it was at like a supermarket or a gas station or whatever?
A Family Dollar store, so I'm assuming
so
it would be
shop
kind of like
anyway.
a pound shop here, like deals.
I'm wondering, I wonder, was he chilling around there waiting to kind of come across a victim in a premeditative sense, or was it like
crime of opportunity,
of circumstance kind of?
Now I couldn't find anything about that, but I personally think that maybe this is something he had been planning. I don't think he was necessarily planning to
do it then and there,
adopt someone there, but the fact that Michelle was asking around for directions, and I'm assuming he maybe recognised her.
His actions and stuff premeditated in general, but not premeditated against her.
Yeah,
just
against her specifically.
It happened to be that someone in there was looking for directions, and he could use that to lure them. I'm
thinking that maybe, I know they never met, but maybe he recognised Michelle as someone that Emily was friends with, his daughter.
So more likely to trust him some bit.
And then just saw his chance and took it. I was like, I'm gonna abduct this woman.
Yeah.
So that was fine.
Move.
They got into the house, and Castro told Michelle that Emily was down in the basement doing laundry and that she should be up soon, and then convinced Michelle to follow him upstairs to see the puppies. So he brought her to this room.
And Emily's his daughter.
Michelle is the kidnap victim.
Yeah.
So he brought Michelle up to this room, and she described this as just a small pink room. And they got into the room. There was no puppies there. He slammed the door shut behind them and covered Michelle's nose and mouth with one hand, and used the other hand to push against her head and force her to the ground. So he hogtied her. So I don't know if you know what hogtying is. It's you're on your stomach, your arms and legs are tied behind your back, and your head is tied like up. So it's at an uncomfortable angle, and it's tied to your arms and your legs.
Yeah.
So you physically cannot move. It honestly looks like one of the most uncomfortable ways to be tied up. So he forced her to the ground, hogtied her, and told her, and this is a direct quote, "You're only going to be here for a little while. I'm not going to keep you that long." And then he unzipped his pants and masturbated until he ejaculated on her. There was a long wire running across the room between two poles that were placed at either side of the room, or were fixed at either side of the room.
Like a laundry line inside.
Essentially, yeah. So he proceeded to tie Michelle to the wire.
Yeah.
And then he stuffed a smelly sock in her mouth.
Could it not have at least been clean?
honestly. And then he turned the radio on and up loud and left her there. And Michelle later said that her first thought was, quote, "Holy shit, I'm going to die here soon. I'm not going to be able to hold my son in my hands. I'm not going to be able to say I love him. I'm going to miss every moment of his life." And that just made me so upset when I read that. Because she obviously knew this wasn't going to be...
And like in that moment she's probably also panicking, even though like one of the things in the forefront of the mind also probably at that moment would have been she's supposed to be at a meeting with social services. And it looks awful if you don't show up or if you're even late.
Absolutely. And the thing with Michelle is there, like, I'll get onto this more later, but there wasn't a lot of people looking for her. Because, as I said, she didn't have the best.
Yeah, like her mother was with an abusive man, and if her mother was letting that abusive man abuse the granddaughter or Michelle's son.
So what
son?
Michelle's son,
grandson of the.
So what I read was her mother said that Michelle had a great childhood. She used to help her look after animals and plant fruit and veg and things. But Michelle said they were homeless for a while. She was molested.
Sounds like, do you know what that sounds like? That sounds to me like someone literally kind of like watched a movie of we're living in an idyllic world and people growing their veggies and doing things like nature and animal stuff with their daughter. And she was like, I'm going to use that story. That's what I'm going to go with.
So Michelle also said that her mother, during her childhood, used to keep her off school so that Michelle would be behind in her learning and she could claim money for learning disabilities for Michelle. And then... didn't really report her missing or anything so that she could continue to collect money for Michelle.
Yeah.
So
what age was Michelle?
She was 21 when she was kidnapped.
Oh, and her mother was still able to be claiming money.
That's a good point, actually. I might have mixed something up there. Sorry, misinformation. But yeah, anyway, the point is her mother didn't report her missing, supposedly.
Yeah. Well, the cash cow was no longer cashing, so...
Yeah. So Castro kept Michelle in this room upstairs for around a month, and he would rape her up to 6 times a day.
How does the daughter not find...
His kids aren't living at home with him because the mother got custody.
Yeah, but would they not ever be over?
Oh, like he had people over.
Yeah.
A lot. Like he was in a band, he would have his bandmates come over, but because the music was so loud, they couldn't hear the girls calling for help or anything. And like he was...
I would want to know why there's music playing upstairs and you're down here.
No, as in like the bandmates.
No, I know, but if anyone else was over or if his kids were allowed to visit...
I don't think his kids came over to visit. I think he would visit them outside of the home.
Probably
he
for
obviously,
the reason
obviously didn't want the girls to be discovered. So he would rape her up to 6 times a day. When he would come home from work, he would beat her, rape her, and then immediately tie her up again. And I also read he would feed her once a day. Like he would bring her McDonald's like once a day.
Sounds like my extremely healthy eating pattern. But that's awful.
So eventually he moved her to the basement where he stuck another sock in her mouth, wrapped her in rusty chains and tied her to a pole before putting a motorbike helmet on her. Sorry, that's how people couldn't hear her. Because she was down in the basement and the motorbike helmet was muffling her so much that they couldn't hear her if they were upstairs.
Okay, there we go, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So she was moved down to the basement. She was originally in a room upstairs that had a wire going across.
And then he moved her down to the basement, tied her to a pole in the basement with rusty chains. And
there we go, that makes sense for the sound thing. And whoever wanted, even if someone was like, you know, even if the kids did come over and kids being naturally curious, well, probably not going to go into a basement.
His kids were, his youngest I think would have been about 12 at the time of Michelle's kidnapping.
Yeah, so like why would they bother with a basement? Exactly.
So Castro made Michelle use a bucket as a toilet. Yeah, as a toilet. And when he was on her period, when she was on her period, sorry, when she was on her period, he would only give her paper napkins. Now, give is a bit generous considering he would literally just toss the paper napkins at her when she was on her period.
Yeah, and I suppose as well he can't be seen buying sanitary stuff because it's like, who's it for? Yeah. If anyone ever got suspicious, it's like, who would these pads
which,
for?
like, he could have just been like, oh, it's for my daughter. At least give her some tampons or pads, like, give her somebody of human decency. But anyway,
fucking hell, you're able to hold people captive, visit a friend who has a wife and steal some pads from their bathroom. Do you know what I mean?
There's ways, man.
But again, clearly he clearly doesn't care about basic hygiene or decency towards
clearly not
anyone when he's doing these things.
So after a while of being in the basement, he moved Michelle back to a bedroom on the second floor. But he took her clothes and made her sleep in the cold on a soiled mattress.
Naked.
Yep. Yep. She also wasn't allowed to shower until he had her captive for 8 months. So the first 8 months that she was trapped in that house, she wasn't allowed to shower.
I'm not, obviously this is not the point, but how are you here jerking off over someone who's not had a shower in 8 months?
Mm-hmm.
Or doing more?
Yep. Like, despicable. Absolutely despicable.
Fucking hell.
This next part is upsetting. Like, this is all upsetting. But
Yeah, of course, but there's obviously going to be, like, you know, parts that are worse than others.
Castro brought Michelle a puppy.
No, please, now, this is not going where I think it's going, where I think it's going to keep going.
And then a few months later, he broke the puppy's neck in front of her because the puppy bit him, trying to protect her from Castro.
What do you expect if you give her an animal? Obviously, it's going to bond with her and want to protect her.
Yeah, I'm actually tearing at this.
Like,
so he got her the puppy, and then he went to attack her one night, and the puppy, obviously knowing what was going on,
was bad,
did what dogs do and tried to protect her. So Castro, obviously being bigger and stronger, killed the puppy in front of Michelle. That just, due to being raped so often, Michelle got pregnant 5 times over the time that she was captive, and every time Castro would beat and starve her to the point of miscarriage. When she was pregnant for the 5th time, he made her eat a hot dog covered in mustard, knowing that she was fiercely, like, allergic to mustard, which again caused
anaphylactic shock, I assume.
Miscarriage. Like, she wasn't allergic to the point of
but intolerant,
anaphylaxis,
at least.
but severely intolerant. Michelle had to brush her teeth with washing up liquid.
Oh, I can't even. Oh, the taste.
Yeah. And Castro would give her pencils and notebooks, which she would use as diaries and sketchpads. Eventually, Castro put a small black and white TV and a radio in her room, and one day she saw a report about a missing girl, and then she heard Castro blasting music in the basement and came to the horrifyingly correct conclusion that Castro had taken her to. Which is where we get on to our next victim.
So now we've got 2 in the house.
Yeah, so on April 21st, 2003...
Imagine how sad it must be, though, when you're getting those radio things and only this person is being looked for. And, like, if missing people are being reported, you'd imagine they'd all be said at the same time on the radio. So, like, this girl is being reported as missing, but you're not being mentioned at all.
Not heard a thing about herself.
Yeah.
So on April 21st, 2003, Amanda Berry went to work as normal. She worked at Burger King, and she had actually considered calling off work that day because the next day was actually her 17th birthday.
Oh my God.
Yes. So after her shift, she began walking home.
This, you know, I feel like her thinking about cancelling her shift and stuff like that was actually nothing to do with her birthday. I think in her head she thought it was because of her birthday, but I think the universe or some sort of guide was being like, you are not to go to work today.
Yeah, like she later said, like...
It was a gut feeling, like.
It was a gut feeling, and that she often wonders what would happen if she had cancelled it.
Yeah, but then again, if she, I don't know, obviously I'm assuming you'll get to how it's all discovered and whatnot, but I would assume that, like, maybe if she hadn't also been taken, things could have worked out differently, and he might not have got caught, or he might not got caught as soon, you know, things like that.
I definitely think...
So for Michelle's sake...
Yeah, I definitely think if not for Amanda Berry, he would not have been caught at all, or not for a
long time. So for Michelle, at least, being captive with so long, it's a good thing that, like, obviously it's a horrible thing.
It's a horrible thing that any of them...
Yeah, exactly. But, like, in terms of it being blown open, discovered, and whatnot.
Yeah. So on the way home, Ariel Castro pulled up and asked if she wanted a spin home, or a ride home if you're American. Amanda knew and was actually friendly with one of Castro's daughters from middle school, and so she accepted the ride because she had, or the spin, I can't say ride because ride means something very different here. She accepted the spin because she had no reason to suspect anything suspect or anything nefarious would happen.
Yeah.
And So Castro.
Oh my god, ew. Sorry, I'd never seen him before, so I just
He's
looked
an
him up.
ugly motherfucker.
Disgusting. No. Ugh.
Yeah. So.
I
excuse
never
me.
normally say this, but he looks like the type.
Yeah. So on the way home, Castro offered to stop by his house so that Amanda could see his daughter, the one that she knew. And when they got to the house, he told Amanda his daughter must be in the bath and offered her a tour of the house while they waited.
The daughter that's never at the house. But
Yeah.
anyhow.
So the daughters were never in the house, like.
Yeah.
So during the tour, he took her to one bedroom, opened the door, and she actually saw Michelle Knight sleeping in the room. And I believe he told Amanda that it was his brother's girlfriend or something that was in there. When he took her to the next bedroom, it was dark, and he told her to pull down her pants. And she said later, quote, "And from there I knew, like, this was not going to be good," end quote. So Castro then took her to the basement, and just like with Michelle, he tied her up. This time he used duct tape. And as with Michelle, he put the bike helmet on her, saying, "Just be quiet and don't make any noise, and I'll take you home." Then he turned the lights off and left her there with a small TV on. Over the next few days, Amanda had to watch her mother and sister on the news fighting for her to be found as local media began covering her case. She told herself she would fight to get home to them as long as they fought for her to come home, saying, quote, "You know what? I'm going to make it home to you."
I'm still like, going back to the media covering her, I'm still can't get over the fact that nobody was able to report
Well, you
Michelle.
see,
Like, surely, like, how...
Michelle's family assumed that she had run away because she didn't get custody back of her
Yeah,
son.
like, I get that with the family, but, like, is there no friends that she normally would have kept in contact, even if you up and disappear, like,
Not that I know of.
so, like, it's so sad.
Yeah, and even with Amanda, I'm sure Amanda was considered a runaway for a few days.
But do you know what I notice with a lot of podcasts I listen to and true crime and stuff like that? A lot of people always assume that it's for the first while that they've run away, and sure, especially when it's obviously, I know it's obviously approached differently as well when it's minors and kids, but like they also say that like the first is the 24 to 48 hours are the most important. So like what good is you being like, oh, 24 to 48 hours so important, but then also being like, sure, they've probably run away if they don't show up and by later or by tomorrow let us know. That's already 24 hours gone.
I'm saying it now. If I ever go missing, I did not run away. Some foolish person has decided to kidnap me and are having no choice but to listen to me rant and ramble.
Being like, can I record this for my podcast?
Yeah. By the way, do you mind if just for posterity, can I record this? I do a true crime podcast.
Just if you ever get caught, at least I'll find my phone. Can I have a statement?
Yeah. Tell me, why did you kidnap me? Do you regret your choice? Yeah, I thought you would.
It's literally the whole epitome of that, do you know when you're young and it's like, would you go away if anyone kidnapped you, they'd bring you back?
Yeah. It wouldn't be long bringing you back. So, after 4 days in the basement, Castro moved Amanda to one of the upstairs bedrooms. And a week after kidnapping her, he actually used her phone to call her family, saying, "I have Mandy, she wants to be with me." And her family thought this was weird because nobody called her Mandy unless they knew her.
So they knew that whoever this was obviously someone probably local, because they know her by the name that people call her.
Now, the FBI were able to determine that the call came from within a 30 to 40 block radius, but nothing more came of it.
Okay.
Because remember, this is 2003.
Exactly, and at least, to be fair, I suppose for the time, maybe you're narrowing it down to that radius. It's a big radius, especially, I suppose, in America.
But they couldn't get an
exact...
exact...
But at least it's somewhere.
Yeah. So nothing more came of that. Now, similar to Michelle, Amanda also kept a diary and would use a code to track how many times a day Castro had raped her. She said, quote, "I would always write these numbers at the top of the page because I felt like, one day maybe authorities will get to read it and he'll be punished for what he did." For every
count.
Yeah, so, like, I know So the reason I decided to cover this case was because I saw clips of a documentary about Amanda Berry on TikTok.
Yeah.
And she was actually speaking about the diary, and there was pictures of the diary, and what she would do was at the top of the page she would write X3 or X whatever number, and that was to signify the amount of times that she had been raped that day. So in 2006...
So how long has he had Amanda at this point?
He's had Michelle a year and he's had Amanda a couple of months.
Okay.
In 2006, which would be 4 years after Amanda was kidnapped. No, sorry, 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. She realised that she was pregnant. So
And she was 17 at the time of going missing, so she's only 20 now.
yeah, she would have turned 17 the day after
Yeah.
being kidnapped.
Happy fucking birthday.
Yeah. So bearing in mind, every time Michelle got pregnant, Castro would force her to have a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Did not do that with Amanda.
As in, he knew that she was pregnant.
So he actually forced Michelle to help deliver the child.
That is...
I know.
Like, I'm sure, like nobody obviously wants probably to have a child with someone like that, but that doesn't mean you want to have a miscarriage either.
Exactly, and the fact that, like, her miscarriages must have been brutal because...
And no healthcare practitioner to help or support any of it. And you're getting fucking tissues for your period. Don't mind a miscarriage. What are you getting for that?
And the fact that he was physically beating and starving these babies out of her. And, like, I'm not saying that she maybe wanted these babies, because I don't know.
Exactly.
But still, to be...
Nobody, either way, nobody wants to go through any of this.
To be raped up to 6 times a day, to get pregnant 5 times, and for him to force her to have a miscarriage every time, and then force her to deliver the child that he has put in a 20-year-old girl is just beyond cruel, in my opinion. So he actually said to Michelle that if the baby didn't survive, he would kill her. So they delivered the baby in a small paddling pool.
But, like, what the fuck? Like, are people not going to be like, where has this baby popped out of?
Well, no, because he didn't bring... so the baby was raised in the house.
I know, but, like, why are you buying all the baby stuff?
He had excuses. So, Jocelyn, the baby...
I loved that name.
Jocelyn, was born... She turned blue not too long after being born.
Oh, shit.
So Michelle performed mouth-to-mouth until she started breathing. And... yeah, so with Jocelyn, Castro adored her.
Do we know, were Amanda and Michelle being kept in the same room at this point?
Separate rooms.
They were still separate rooms. Only Michelle being brought to Amanda, so they weren't even having that social aspect.
No, he limited their contact as much as possible.
Probably didn't want them to try and make a plan
because he was
or team
controlling
up or anything, like.
every aspect of their lives.
Yeah.
So Jocelyn was born, and she was kept in the house most of the time. As she got a bit older, Castro would let her play in the back garden, and he would bring her to Sunday service and things. He would tell people it was his girlfriend's daughter or it was a family member's daughter, and he actually showed one of his daughters with his ex-wife a picture of Jocelyn one day, and she kind of thought it was strange that the child looked so much like one of her sisters did at that age, but obviously had no reason to suspect.
Because you're not going to think that this is what's going on.
No, especially of your own dad.
Like, you know, you had to leave them, like that the mother had to leave him. The mother of his kids had to leave him because he was abusive and whatnot. But there's a fine line between
domestic violence
and like premeditated crime, rape, assault, kidnapping, everything on complete random other people in the area, or randomers full stop.
Exactly. So Michelle said later that it seemed as though Castro preferred Amanda. She had the bigger room, she had the colour TV, and she was allowed to wear clothes while Michelle had to stay naked.
But like,
which I think was his twisted way of trying to breed resentment between the girls so that they couldn't form a bond. Because Michelle would be looking at Amanda in the bigger room with the better TV, allowed to wear clothes, allowed to keep her baby. And like that would obviously make the wheels in her mind turn and breed a bit of resentment.
I feel like the only way that would have like really, really worked out the way he would have really wanted to is if Michelle had somehow managed to develop Stockholm Syndrome, where, you know, because then obviously if you're starting to see the captor differently or starting to fall for them or anything like that,
starting to sympathise
then
with them,
you're going to be jealous of the other person. But I can't see in any way, shape or form, without Stockholm Syndrome being involved, how
exactly
that would
because
happen.
Even when Michelle was speaking about it, she wasn't speaking about it as if she was jealous or resentful. It was very factual, just saying it seems as though he preferred
She was
Amanda.
like, I'm aware that this is mind games.
Yeah. So then on April 2nd, 2004, 14-year-old Georgina...
Oh my God, it's younger every time.
Yeah, Georgina DeJesus, commonly known as Gina, was walking home from school with her friend Arlene. Guess who Arlene was? One of Castro's daughters.
That's what I was going to say.
So this girl was friends with one of Castro's daughters, and Castro was friendly with Gina's father.
The mind wanders.
I know. So they parted ways. So I'm assuming it was they were walking home and just had to part ways at a certain corner or a certain place to go to their respective houses.
Yeah.
And not too long after this, Castro pulled up and asked Gina if she had seen Arlene. Gina said, yeah, she's
Probably
just...
having been following them and knowing exactly what way that... Yeah.
So Gina said, yeah, she's just around the corner, and Castro asked if she would help him find her. So she got into the car, and once Gina was in the car, he drove to his house and asked her to help him move a stereo. She found his behaviour odd and said that he was preening himself. That's my phrasing. He's preening, because he was fixing his eyebrows, trimming his mustache and nose hairs.
Okay.
And then, he began touching her, and she said, what are you doing? You could go to jail. So then Castro told her it was time for her to go home, but that she couldn't go out the door that she came in. So he led her to the basement, where he grabbed her and chained her up.
For fuck's sake. And at this stage, Amanda and Michelle are in 2 different rooms upstairs. But the basement just seems to be the introductory place.
Yeah. So at... Where was I? Oh, yes. So at first, the bindings that he used weren't tight enough, so Gina actually attempted to make a run for it.
Yeah, rightly
but
so.
He caught her and sat on her back. Now, she continued to fight him, but
Sat on the child.
Yeah, the child, literally. The child.
Yeah, literally, like.
But he sat on her back, and
I'm sure even when Amanda went missing, I'm sure going by...
She was 16, like...
Yeah, and even with turning 17, I'm sure the age of consent and whatnot is higher in America than it is here.
I think it's 17.
Because it's 17 here and in the UK.
Yeah.
I think it's actually older in America.
I'm actually not sure about that. I'll have to look into that when I finish reading through this.
Or it used to be, one or the other.
So Gina continued to fight him, but he overpowered her and continued tying her up. Now, at first, Castro seemed to favour Gina, so I know I said it was probably a manipulation tactic, but I think as well the fact that he had Michelle for a year and then he brought Amanda in, and Amanda was this shiny new toy, and the same thing happened with Gina, shiny new toy to him.
And in regards to what I was saying, it is all updated now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what is it?
Some states, 34 of the states, it's 16 years of age, and in the remaining states, the age of consent is either 17 or 18 years old.
Interesting.
6 states are 17 and 11 states are 18. So, depending on what state, like, do you know what that state's rule is?
Is Ohio.
If she was 17 or 18. I feel like in somewhere like Ohio it would have been 17 or 18.
Probably,
That's just the vibe I get. So that would have been statutory.
Yeah.
For at least a day. Apart from it not being statutory and just being full on rape anyway, but...
So, at first, Castro seemed to favour Gina. She had the nicest room and he treated her better than Michelle and Amanda, though he still did horrible things to her.
Yeah.
And she actually can remember the exact date that he raped her for the first time, which was May 7th, 2004. So Castro, like, this part did nearly break me. Like, honestly, it did. Castro would sometimes rape one of the girls on a mattress, while another one of the girls was right next to them.
In the same mattress.
In the same room, in the same mattress. And Michelle would
I just can't imagine. Imagine being Michelle or Amanda. Obviously, you're in a horrible situation already, but also then watching him do that to a 14-year-old child.
Yeah. So Michelle would often beg him to rape her instead of Gina. And she would hold Gina's hand during the attack and tell her everything would be all right. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional. So that's what I have for Gina, because I found it quite hard reading about what happened to her, so
and as
I
well,
didn't want to put it in because she was so young.
And as well, I suppose when I get with the age being so young as well, like it's not like you can give much of a background about childhood and stuff like that because they're still experiencing childhood.
She had no childhood after that. Like she lost the entirety of her teenage years.
Of course, it's gone on being a captive, on probably trying to get help, therapy, everything and anything that could, in some semblance, help them to process.
Exactly. So while in captivity, Castro had strict rules for the girls. They could only use a drop of dish soap for a full load of dishes. He tried to limit their interactions with each other, and there was like a pan that they would put on the stove after cleaning, and it had to be perfectly in the middle of the stove or he'd batter them. Like it couldn't be a centimetre to the left or the right.
What a
Had to be
fucking ape.
bang on in the centre. And then...
His, the mother of his original child from the start of the story,
Grimilda.
they were married, weren't they? So
Yeah.
that's his ex-wife.
Yeah.
She is so lucky that she managed to
Get out when
actually
she did.
successfully split up
Yeah.
and go somewhere else.
But as well, like, I just couldn't stop thinking that if the police had done something about it when he was abusing his wife, these
It might-
girls never would have
yeah.
had to go through this. But look,
Or he would have been on a
hindsight-
list and he might have been a potential suspect from the get-go when the first person was reported missing.
Look, hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? So then, when Amanda and Castro's daughter Jocelyn was almost 3 years old, she began asking about the chains on her mother. Now, Castro had been telling the child to call these chains bracelets.
Bracelets.
He was telling her, oh, they're mommy's bracelets.
Wrap
So
one of those
then-
bracelets around your neck and do them all a favour, please.
Please. So when Jocelyn started asking about the chains, Castro finally removed them. And then later he did the same for Michelle and Gina. Now, Jocelyn was allowed more freedom than the three girls, and she'd be allowed into the back garden. He would take her to the park or Sunday service. And so Michelle would write poetry and draw pictures to cope with everything. She thought about her son constantly, and she said that Gina became a large reason for her to keep fighting and living. And that when Castro was out of the house, they would blast music and sing and dance because they knew it was something everyone else was doing, and it helped them to feel less cut off from the outside world. And I remember reading that they said the song Skyfall by Adele
Okay.
was like a big favourite of theirs.
So what year are we at now?
So we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that because I feel like you're going to be like, what the fuck? So Castro would let Amanda and Gina watch vigils that were being held for them on TV, meanwhile telling Michelle that nobody was looking for her.
And there wasn't still at this
I don't
point.
think so, no.
So,
So on May 6th, 2013, 11 years after he abducted Michelle.
which means he also had Amanda for...
He had Amanda for 10 years and Gina for 9 years. Yeah.
So, like, she was 14 when she went missing.
She was 23 when she finally escaped.
What the fuck?
So Jocelyn went upstairs that morning into her mother's room saying, "Daddy's gone, Daddy's gone." Michelle said she heard this from the room she was in with Gina. So I'm assuming Michelle and Gina actually shared a room at some point for a while. And she thought that it was a test because Castro had often tested the girls by leaving the doors open, and then if they tried to escape, he'd pounce out of one of the rooms and beat the fucking shit
thinking
out
that
of them.
he could have told Jocelyn to go up and do that, and then
Yeah.
if they tried to leave.
Yeah.
And what age would Jocelyn be now?
She was about 7, I think.
Okay, about that. So, like, at that age,
About
if you,
6 or 7,
like, if a
yeah.
child was told to go up and say such and such,
They would.
and they were told, oh, it's just a little
It's
joke.
just a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would. So, Michelle heard Amanda go downstairs, and the next thing she heard was banging and shouting. She thought someone was trying to break in, or that Castro had caught and was beating Amanda. When her and Gina heard shouts of police, police, she told Gina to hide in case it wasn't really them and that she would check first. She tried the bedroom door, and when she discovered it was open, she actually got so scared that she closed it again because she was terrified that this was another test and that she was going to get hurt.
That when she saw her bedroom door was unlocked.
So Michelle and Gina had no idea that Amanda had taken her chance, and she went downstairs. The front door was open but wired with an alarm, and beyond that the storm door was locked. You know, those like metal doors on the outside of houses
Yeah,
in
so the
America.
alarm would obviously go off to let him know.
Yeah, so the storm door was locked with a padlock, and he obviously had taken the key with him.
Yeah.
So Amanda was able to squeeze an arm out. One passerby saw her but didn't intervene, and then another passerby didn't speak great English, so he couldn't help her that much. And then Charles Ramsey, a neighbour, noticed her and tried to help by pulling the door. When this didn't work, he kicked a hole through the bottom of the door. So Amanda, I think, finished kicking it out.
Yeah.
She crawled through, got Jocelyn to follow her, and then immediately went to a neighbour's house and called 911. Now, I do have the 911 clip, so I'm going to play that for you now.
5:51 p.m. 59 seconds. May 62013.
Cleveland 911.
Hello, please. Help me. I'm Amanda Berry.
You need police, fire, or ambulance.
I need police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now.
Okay, and what's your address?
2207 Seymour Avenue.
2207 Seymour. Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
Huh?
Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
I can't hear you.
It looks like you were calling me from 2210 Seymour.
Yeah, I'm across the street. I'm using this phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors. Talk to the police when they get there.
Okay.
Okay, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay, I will right now. I
We're
need
going
them
to send
now.
them as soon as we get a car open.
No, I need them now before he gets back.
All right, we're sending them, okay?
Okay, I mean, like,
Who's the guy? Who's the guy you're who's the guy who went out?
his name is Ariel Castro.
All right, how old is he?
He's like 52.
All right, and
Even I'm Amanda Berry. I've been on the news for the last 10 years.
okay, I got that here. I already.
Georgina.
And you said what was his name again?
Ariel Castro.
And is he white, black, or
He's
Hispanic?
Hispanic.
What's he wearing?
I don't know because he's not here right now. That's
When
why
he
I got
left,
away.
when he left, what was he wearing?
Sweetheart, it's a pity. What?
Right, the police are on the way. Talk to them when they get there. Okay.
Okay.
I told you they're on the way. Talk to them when they get there. Okay.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, what are your thoughts on how the dispatcher?
Okay, well, first of all, I've never heard that before until now. Second of all, I think for the most part, the dispatcher did his job the way you're supposed to do your job. I didn't like the last part of it. He sounded like he was kind of losing his patience a little bit. And I get it, because as well, 911 call centres, mental,
stressful.
and I suppose you have to treat every call the same, obviously based on the circumstances, but like they also probably have more calls that they really need to answer because someone could literally be dying right there and then on the road, or things like that. So I suppose it sounds rude to me, but I think given the basis of their job, I don't think it is rude. It's just firm.
Here's the thing. I thought it was very brusque the way he was speaking to her.
And I'm thinking as well, they probably get a lot of hoax calls claiming to be a missing person and they're not.
The 911 dispatcher was actually reprimanded for not following policy.
Okay.
So you're supposed to stay on the line with them until the police arrive.
I thought
At
that
least
happens.
in Ohio, but I'm sure it's the same.
Yeah, like I know in a lot of places, depending on what's
pretty
going
much
on.
everywhere.
But like I know, like if you're like trapped in a house and someone's trying to break in, you have to stay on the phone with them because they're in danger. But I would have assumed, like obviously personally, if I was the dispatcher and I could have gotten away with it, I would have stayed on the phone with them until the police arrived. But knowing when he knows that they're at a neighbour's house with neighbours and they're safe.
But it's the fact that there's 2 other women in the house. I actually don't know. Did she mention that during the call? Actually,
That's what I was thinking. I didn't hear that being mentioned.
Maybe take that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. Communications Commander Thomas Stachel, great name, said that Jack Purdy was the name of the dispatcher, could have been more compassionate and more empathetic when dealing with Amanda Berry, and that he violated city policy by not staying on the line with her until officers arrived on the scene. Now, he did also say that he recognised that Purdy had efficiently gotten the police to respond to Berry's call. So he was reprimanded in the form of a written letter of reprimand that was remained in his file for 3 years.
Okay.
But that
yeah,
was
because like the
fine.
only thing I can see, obviously, like you said, in their state, he's supposed to stay on the phone until they arrive. Okay, so fair enough. That obviously is a violation, and you can't take things, even
But
small violations, lightly.
Still complete
But
his job.
he did his job.
He did.
And in terms of
personally-
compassion, empathy, obviously you have to make sure that like you don't make them feel worse or anything.
Yeah.
But he's still like your job is to get them to help.
Yeah, I personally
He wasn't
do think
out of his way rude or mean.
no, but I personally do think he could have shown a little bit more compassion. But anyway, moving on. So, Gina said that it took a while for her to leave her room because she didn't believe that the police were really there, saying, I thought maybe it was people in costumes because I was so shocked. Soon, a police officer entered Michelle and Gina's room. Michelle had peeked out from behind the door, seen the police officer, and immediately threw herself into his arms, shouting, you saved me, Gina, Gina, we're going home. So Gina and Michelle finally got to leave the house. Sunlight burned their eyes as they stepped out of the house, but the wind blowing through their hair confirmed to them that this was real and they were finally free. Now, Castro was arrested the same day and was charged with 4 counts of kidnapping because Michelle, Amanda,
The
Gina
baby she had.
and Jocelyn, and 3 counts of rape for Michelle, Amanda and Gina. 2 days later, after his arrest on May 8th, his bail was set at $8 million.
What I want to know is, what way do counts of rape work? In the sense of, is it on a per person basis, or should that not be way, way higher
no.
in terms of how many times he individually did
We'll
it,
get
or is it
there.
over time?
We'll get there. So those 3 counts of rape, or 3 charges of rape, were based on how many women were in the house.
So
when
that
he
was
had raped.
like just, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So the $8 million of bail was $2 million for each of the charges against him. On June 7th, and
I
on,
personally still don't think that's high enough.
no, on June 7th and on July 12th, the grand jury returned their true bills of indictment, which
Is that their
between-
decision, basically?
Yeah, so between the 2 bills, there was a total of 977 counts.
Of rape?
I'm going to
Counts of everything.
Yeah, so I'm going to go into the breakdown now. So there was 2 counts of aggravated murder for the forced miscarriages.
Okay.
There was 512 counts of kidnapping. I don't quite understand how that breakdown
There was
works.
how many?
512. So maybe that's for the amount of time that he had them.
Yeah, how does that work?
Like, I'm assuming that is a breakdown of like how long he had them in captivity for.
Yeah, maybe one count covers a certain period of
Yeah,
time or something.
That's what I'm thinking.
But like, kidnap should be punished to the fullest extent regardless of how long you've had them, because you still did it and you'd have had them for as long as you wanted had you not been caught.
Yeah.
So I feel like anyone who gets a count of kidnap, it should be treated in terms of punishment wise or reprimanding wise. The amount should be overall the same maximum amount.
Yeah. So then there was also 446 counts of rape, 7 counts of gross sexual imposition, 6 counts of felonious assault, 3 counts of child endangerment, and 1 count of possession of criminal tools.
The amount of counts of
Yeah.
rape.
Fucking terrifying. So, as part of a plea deal or a plea
Shouldn't have even
bargain,
been given a plea bargain.
I know, Castro pleaded guilty to 937 counts on July 26th. This,
Sorry, but why bother even taking a plea bargain? Because for what you've done, you're
so
probably...
he wouldn't get the death penalty. Yeah. So this plea bargain meant Castro would not get the death penalty. Instead, he would receive consecutive life sentences plus 1,000 years without parole. He also had to forfeit his right for appeal.
Did you say 1,000 years?
1,000 years on top.
Good.
No chance for parole. He also had to forfeit his right for appeal and could not profit off his crimes. Additionally, he had to forfeit all his assets, including his house, which was demolished and turned into a garden. And on August 1st, when he was sentenced, he was also ordered to pay a fine of $100,000. Now, Castro claimed that he was not a monster and that he was a good person who was addicted to sex and pornography. And that's why he kidnapped 3 women and held them captive for 11, 10 and 9 years.
One of which being underage.
2 of which being underage. Well, Amanda actually don't know what the age consent is in Ohio, but still, kidnapped a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old and held them captive in his house so that he could do whatever he wanted to them for 11, 10 and 9 years.
Okay, right.
Because he was addicted to sex and porn.
And if you're addicted to sex and porn, if we were to just but what's that got to do with the forcing miscarriages, the beating the shit out of them, the mind games, the beating the shit out of your ex-wife when she was still with you? What's that got to do with sex and porn?
I would argue that Ariel Castro is a fucking monster and a terrible human being.
And yeah, but the thing is, it's not even an argument, it's a fact.
It's a fact, yeah. He also claimed that he never beat the women and most of the sex that he had with them was consensual.
First of all, a 14-year-old can't consent.
Cannot consent to sex because she is a child.
And second of all, you're a fucking...
Like, she was 14. She should have been worrying about her first kiss, going on her first date, having her first relationship, school, looking forward to her quinceañera, not fucking worrying about being raped
Yeah.
in a house that she was held captive
Disgraceful.
in for 9 fucking years. But anyway, so he claimed he never beat them, most of the sex was consensual, and then was like going between apologizing and blaming the FBI and the victims. So like he would blame the FBI for not catching him and blame the girls for getting in the car with him, while also insisting that he discovered they weren't virgins when he had sex with them. Like, what's that got to fucking do with anything?
Because that's really important information.
Yeah.
If anything, that's important information for them to say, like, to, you know, say that he took their virginity, like, as in,
Yeah.
you know, just to, I suppose, further the fact, you know what I
That
mean?
he's a scumbag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. But like, why would he be saying it? It's like he's bragging.
And then would be next thing would be apologizing, saying, quote, "I hope they can find it in their hearts to forgive me, because we had a lot of harmony going on in that house." No, you did not. You had women held captive in that house. I would not call that anything even close to harmonious. Harmonious, I love that word. Michelle told Castro, I'm assuming in her victim impact statement, and this is a direct quote again, "You took 11 years of my life away. I spent 11 years in hell. Now your hell is just beginning. I will overcome all that has happened, but you will face hell for eternity. I will live on. You will die a little every day as you think of the 11 years of atrocities that you inflicted on us. I can forgive you, but I will never forget." And then on the...
Very big of her to say, I can forgive you.
Like, these women are amazing. Honestly, absolutely amazing. On the evening of September 3rd, 2013, Castro was found dead in his cell at the Correctional Reception Center in Orient, Ohio. He had hung himself with his bedsheets.
Why didn't he just take the death penalty then?
Because with the death penalty, he still would have had to wait in prison until his execution date.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair.
But like, he still probably would have just been able to kill himself in the cell there.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, that's what he did. On July 9th, 2013, Michelle, Amanda and Gina put out a video statement thanking the public for their support, and their attorney stated that the three had a strong desire for privacy during this time. Totally understandable.
Of course.
You don't want to be dealing with the media and dealing with people asking questions when you've just
And like, let's be
escaped
realistic, like,
from something this
to some
horrific.
extent, obviously there's a big need for media and there's a big need for news stories to be published and for
But
the
a lot of
knowledge to be
them-
out there.
A lot of them are fucking
Vultures.
parasites. Honest to God.
They'll do anything and invade anyone regardless of what they've gone through. And I know in a sense that's also kind of their job.
But still, have a bit of respect.
But like, yeah, bit of decency, especially in those kind of scenarios.
So the Cleveland Courage Fund had a bank account set up to help the women transition after the horrific experience, and at the time of the video's release it held around 1.05 million.
And you know, I was just thinking as well, actually, especially for the youngest, Gina, was it?
Gina.
Because like, she didn't finish school. She didn't, you know, she would have had no qualifications or anything. Like, not saying that Amanda would have finished school or anything, but she had the experience in Burger King.
Yeah, she had a little bit more.
She had some basis for what the working life
Yeah.
is kind of like, a little bit, a touch of it. You know, so like, fucking hell. And then obviously you're not going to want to work, I'd assume, for a long time after.
Oh,
like,
no,
maybe
like,
some
they would
people
need
would
years
manage,
of therapy.
you know, to kind of be that kind of person where they need to work to
Yeah.
deal.
Because like,
But most,
Michelle
I wouldn't.
was 21 when she was kidnapped. Not saying it was any easier for her because she
No,
was
of
that
course
bit
not.
older.
She was still 21, like.
But Amanda was just turning 17, like literally just about to turn 17, and Gina was 14. Like, she was still developing, still growing. Like, there are so many things that these women should have been doing at this point in their lives, and none of them involved being a sex slave for a sick individual who just plucked them off the street and was like, "You're coming home with me."
And like, not only did he none of his victims were random strangers.
No,
like,
he
the way he
knew-
just decided
So
and picked people up. They
Michelle-
were all people that he knew,
Michelle knew Emily and lived a couple of blocks away. Amanda,
or that he knew them properly. They knew of him and
yeah.
he knew of them, and they, you know, they
the
assumed
fact,
he was
like,
a normal
what
person.
gets me is Gina. He was friends with Gina's dad. Like, I'm just
Like,
picturing him sitting in the house, comforting this man, knowing full well his daughter was in his basement.
yeah, and also as well, probably if you're ever meeting your daughter, comforting your daughter that her friend is missing.
Mm-hmm. Knowing that she's in your basement.
You're the reason she's missing, you absolute sadistic something.
Anyway. So before Amanda went missing, her grandfather had promised her a classic Chevrolet Monte Carlo that had been built the year she was born. And he kept it for her in case she was found alive. And he actually still had it for her when she was found.
That's
And what really
nice.
upset me is Amanda's mother actually died before she escaped.
That's awful, and
I
she wouldn't know
and
that,
her
would
mother,
she?
like, her mother was campaigning and campaigning and
Like,
campaigning
would
for
he have
years.
told her that? Would she have seen it on telly?
No, so what actually happened was her mother went on a TV show with a psychic, and the psychic told her that Amanda was dead. So she kind of lost hope and took down all the posters and stopped looking for her for a couple of years. And then
I hate when people do that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer
Vulture.
in mediumship, psychic, all of that. But, like, no.
Yeah. And then I think a year or two before her mother, her name was Luande, I think, before she passed away, she started looking for her again. But she ultimately died before Amanda escaped or was found. And
That
things.
is so awful. Imagine
know.
to, like, be finally free and looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing everyone and finding out
Yeah.
that your mother isn't with you anymore,
Yeah.
like, around.
So Amanda's granddad had kept this car for her. Now it needed some restoration because it was unused for so long.
And did Amanda's, you might have already said it and it might have just gone over my head, but did Amanda's mother get sick or something, seeing as her
she
grandparent
did.
was
Yeah,
still alive?
She got cancer, I'm sure.
Okay.
So a lot of auto shops offered to restore the car for her for free.
Of course. That's so nice.
Now Michelle changed her name after being rescued. I'm not going to mention what she changed it to out of respect for her.
Yeah,
I think she's
That's
been
fair.
through enough.
Yeah, exactly.
She started to get tattoos as part of her healing journey. She got several tattoos in memoriam of the miscarriages. There was one in memoriam of kind of symbolizing who she was and who she was now. So like her old life versus her new life.
Like rebirth kind of tattoos almost.
Yes. So it was all part of her healing journey. She said she found it a very healing experience. She discovered that Joey was adopted by his foster family after she went missing. And while the family have sent her pictures of him, she hasn't been able to see him because the family felt he was too young to know about what had happened to her, and Michelle also just didn't want to bring him into that.
Yeah, she probably basically agreed with that family
Yeah.
that it's too early to...
So like he was a toddler when she went missing. 11 years later he would have been in his preteens,
middle teens, 14,
preteens to
15,
early
preteens,
teens,
mid-teens, yeah.
And she didn't want to drag him into all this. She plans to see him when he's an adult, which honestly
That's such a strong thing to do.
yes, I agree. Like
It shows how much she loves her child.
yes, like the thought of him kept her going in captivity, and
Yeah,
still,
because Michelle was the one that was on the
she's-
way to the social worker
Yeah.
meeting when,
like, despite everything she's been through, the fact that he was what got her through captivity, essentially,
She's still putting him first.
Yeah, and I think
she's
that
not,
just,
she's not being like, well, this happened to me,
and I want to see my son.
Yeah,
She's putting him ahead of herself, and I think that's such a strong decision,
admirable.
so admirable. Like, I have so much respect for these three women for what they've been through and how they've handled it.
yeah.
So Michelle got married in 2016, and she hopes to adopt because unfortunately she can't have any more children due to the abuse that Castro inflicted on her.
The miscarriages that were caused, obviously,
Yeah,
put an end to
which
that.
is just disgraceful in my opinion. But I think it is lovely that she wants to adopt.
Yeah,
She's released 2 books. The first one was released in 2014 and it's titled Finding Me, A Decade of Darkness, A Life Reclaimed, a memoir of the Cleveland kidnappings. And in 2018 she released her second book titled Life After Darkness, Finding Healing and Happiness After the Cleveland Kidnappings. And as well in 2015 Amanda and Gina released a book titled Hope, a memoir of
Did they do that
survival in
together?
Cleveland. Yes. A memoir, Hope, a memoir of survival in Cleveland. Amanda and Gina received honorary diplomas from John Marshall High School in 2015. And in April 2019, Amanda was able to reunite with Charles Ramsey, who was the neighbour that helped her to escape the house by kicking the door in. Amanda now works for a radio station in Cleveland where she covers missing persons cases. And she said of the job, "That's the most important thing that I'm doing right now. I just want to make the world a better place." Gina finally got to have her quinceañera, where she wore a dazzling white dress. And she now volunteers for the Amber Alert Committee, providing support and comfort to families of abducted and missing children. And I know I've said this a lot, but these women are amazing.
I can't get
they're
over
so
how
amazing.
they're... Obviously, I'm sure there's like loads of stuff going on behind closed doors in their healing process and
Yeah,
stuff like
of
that. Of
course.
course, same with anyone in any situation,
Yeah.
regardless of how severe it is or whatnot. But
It's the fact for me that
going out, you know, being able to be like, it's very even stronger of them to be able to, for like, is it Amanda, for her to be able to
cover
Cover
missing
it.
persons cases, and
Yeah,
for
and then
Gina to be able to provide comfort and
exactly.
support, like with everything that they've been through,
they're still in a position where
fought-
they're exposed to those type of situations that they've
Yeah.
been through.
but they fought so hard to get where they are today. And like, it seems to me that the main thing they want to do is make the world better and help people and make sure that nobody else goes through what they
Yeah,
went
they
through.
don't only want to it's not that they just want to heal and move on. They want to heal and
Move
make
on
the world
and
a better
help.
place while they're moving on.
Yeah. So that's all the information
I
that
suppose,
I
like
have
Michelle
today on
said in
this
her victim
case.
impact statement, forgive but not forget.
Yeah, like I can't tell you how many times I was in tears typing this up. It was I would say one of the most difficult cases that I've researched. And
It's mind blowing.
it's mind blowing. Like, and I've looked into this case before, but this is the first time that I did kind of a deep dive on it,
Yeah.
and it just absolutely blew my mind how strong these women are.
In my opinion, I think out
And
of
how
all the cases and stuff
disgusting
we've
he
covered,
was.
I think this is the obviously not best one in sense of it being anyway a positive thing that happened,
Yes.
but you know, best one in a sense of like just seeing, like after hearing everything they've been through, everything they've gone through, everything this horrible fucking monster of a man did.
I wouldn't even call him a man, to be honest.
No, fucking, I don't even know what to call him because I wouldn't insult any other species either,
You're a long string of piss, Ariel.
to say the least. Fucking hell, you're a big pile of scutter.
Long string of misery.
But yeah, no, it's just to see the progression of how they're dealing with it and how they're helping
it's
others and stuff
amazing.
like that in the end, I think just really, wow.
Absolutely amazing. I do really want to read their memoirs
Yeah,
as well.
I might
and
look into them myself.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose that is the case of the shit stain of humanity that is Ariel Castro and three
was
amazing
intense.
strong women. Like, just
Well,
yeah.
fucking hell, sending obviously, just to clarify, because I've never said this in other podcasts, but the same to any other previous victims and families and whatnot.
Yeah,
But just
we're
sending
always
all the
sending
kind of love and strength out
positivity.
to, especially like to the families, to survivors, and to those who are unfortunately rest in peace, kind of. But like just,
And we send ill wishes to the perpetrators. I hope you always have the shits.
yeah. And if you're not alive, I hope you're fucking rotting in some form of semblance of hell.
Hope the mice are eating your eyeballs.
Fuck's sake, like, but
Sorry, that might have been a bit graphic.
I didn't get a graphic of it until you said graphic, and I was like, but yeah. So as Tanya said, I suppose that closes the case.
For this week.
Yes. So as always, very grateful to those of you listening.
You're brilliant.
You are A1. We always appreciate feedback, case suggestions, all that kind of a thing.
And
so
thank you as well to the people that have given us case suggestions. We have had a few people.
yes.
Mostly when I'm in the pub.
But I suppose that's a really social aspect, and
and
people
they're like,
are more
listen,
outgoing.
what about this case? What about this case? And I'm like, that's actually a really good
But
one.
it's like
And
text
putting it into my
me or let me
notes.
or write
Yeah,
it down
don't
there.
be afraid
Yeah.
to send us a message on Insta or
At
Facebook,
Twisted Talks
Twitter.
Pod, on I believe Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. Or you can just search Twisted Talks and find our logo. You'll find us.
If not, we'll find you.
Email inquiries. You can find our email and stuff on the Instagram page. I think I have it in on the Facebook page as well. So yeah, but it's twistedtalksthepod@gmail.com if anyone needs to get in touch via that.
And also, apologies for the beep in the middle of the episode.
I
Josh
said a word that I
very
was not proud
naughty
of.
word. He said a very naughty word.
So we're going to learn not to use that word.
Yes.
But yeah, no, the minute it came out my mouth, I looked at Tanya and I put
And
a hand
I didn't
up.
even notice. I didn't even hear you say
I'm
it.
surprised you didn't.
I was so into my little angry spout.
And I was like, that's why I put my hand up, because I was like, once you finish what you're saying, stop, because I'm stopping recording to edit this out right now.
Yeah.
Or to just cover it over. So my bad. Apologies for the word that you didn't get to hear. And no one shall ever know what it is. So there's a mystery.
So that's going to do it for today, guys.
It is, like I said. Oh, and also, if the platform you're listening from allows you to give reviews, especially Apple Podcasts,
do it.
please leave us some reviews. Preferably 5-star, of course.
Because we're class, we're A1,
You
we're
know.
brilliant.
And obviously, the more reviews we get, the more likely we are to end up, I suppose, being more discoverable on these apps. And of course, make sure to send the podcast to your friends, share it on your Facebook, all that.
Send it to your nana.
Well, depends how open-minded she is and if she wants to be terrified.
Yeah. So,
and with that,
Garv
thank you
Mila
very much.
Mahagot.
And for once,
August Slán.
for once, I will not end in Spanish.
No,
I will
Irish
just
instead.
simply. You can end in Irish, and I
did.
will simply. Yeah, but it's me that ends in Spanish,
Oh,
never
right.
you.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Right. Garv Mila Mahagot. Tá gra agam art agus slán foil.
And with that, I bid
it
you
full?
adieu. Goodbye until next week.